In our house, you didn't ask if it was cold enough for a sweater. You just woke up one morning in early October, and there it was, folded neatly at the foot of your bed. Same one every year. Soft gray. Heavy but not thick. And always smelling faintly of cedar and something older, something like safety. We never spoke about it. Not once. The first time I remember the sweater, I was 6. The window had been left open a crack, and I could hear the dry leaves scraping across the back porch like someone gently sweeping at dawn. I remember sitting up and seeing it, square and perfect on the quilt, arms tucked just so, like it had been ironed into patience. I hadn't asked for it. I didn't even know where it came from. But I knew, somehow, that it was mine. Not to keep, but to wear. Just for the day. Just until I was warm again. Mom never mentioned it. Not with a smile. Not with a, "Don't forget your sweater." Not even with one of those passing glances moms give when they want you to notice something without asking. It was just there. Year after year, same routine. First morning the air bit just enough to sting your nose. The sweater appeared. If I outgrew it, a new one took its place, always just the right size, same color, same feel. Same careful fold. In middle school, I pretended not to notice it. Left it on the bed while I rushed out in a too-thin jacket. But by lunchtime I'd regret it. By dinner, it would be draped over the back of a kitchen chair, quietly waiting. It never got washed with the regular laundry. I never saw it in the basket. Never saw it on the line. But every year, when it reappeared, it smelled clean, the kind of clean that comes from drawers, not machines. Like it had been waiting all year in the same spot, listening for the wind to change. By the time I was in high school, I stopped fighting it. I'd wake up, see it folded at the foot of the bed, and slip it on before brushing my teeth. It became less about warmth and more about rhythm. This signaled that summer was truly gone. That the light would change, and the days would shorten, and the kitchen would start to smell like cinnamon again. There was comfort in its arrival. A kind of quiet reassurance that someone was paying attention, not to your words, but to the weather behind your shoulder. It wasn't until college that I realized it didn't follow me. The first autumn in my dorm, I waited. Not consciously. But somewhere inside me, I expected to see it. Neatly folded at the edge of the bunk, ready for the first cold morning. It didn't come. I wore hoodies instead. Too big, with logos that meant nothing. They were warm enough, but empty. I missed the smell. The weight. The silence of it. When I came home for Thanksgiving break that year, the house already smelled like clothes and pie crust. I dropped my bags, hugged Mom, and went up to my room. There it was. On the bed. Folded. Same sweater. Same shape. As if it had never left. As if I had never left. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. But that night, I stood in the hallway for a long time after she'd gone to bed, just staring at the closed linen closet across from my door. Wondering where she kept it. If she'd taken it out the night before. If she'd hesitated. If she smiled while folding it. The next year, it appeared again. And the year after that. Even after I moved out for good, it found its way back. Showing up on visits, waiting quietly in guest rooms, draped over chairs, set gently beside my suitcase like a companion that didn't ask for a seat. When my father passed, the sweater was already out. It was early October. A cold one. No one said it, but we all felt it. The house seemed smaller. The corners quieter. But the sweater was still there. As if something in the house, or in Mom, refused to let the season arrive without it. I remember sitting by the window that evening, wearing it like I always had, and realizing for the first time how long she'd been keeping track. How many times she had gone into that closet before I woke. How carefully she'd watched the sky, the air, the dry scratch of leaves outside the window. How quietly she had loved me. It's a strange thing. To be warmed by something that never speaks. To feel seen by a fold in fabric. To be known not through words, but through timing. But year after year, that sweater told me the same thing. You are cared for. Even when you don't ask. Especially when you don't ask. There was a drawer in my mother's room I never opened. Not because I wasn't allowed, but because I never needed to. It was the second one down in her old oak dresser. The one with a scratch across the handle and a small chip in the corner. From when my cousin bumped it with her suitcase 20 Christmases ago. That drawer was always shut. Neat. Final. I used to wonder, as a kid, if that's where she kept the sweaters. Not just mine, but the sweaters. The ones that folded themselves quietly onto the foot of the bed every October. After Dad passed, she started sleeping earlier. She stopped saying goodnight, but I'd hear her door click softly sometime after Jeopardy ended. One night, I stayed behind while everyone else went out for dinner. The house was too quiet. The floor creaked under my socks. And I stood there, alone in the hallway, hand hovering above that drawer. I didn't open it. Not yet. But for the first time in my life. I placed my hand on the wood. And it felt warmer than I expected. That Thanksgiving, Mom asked if I'd help bring down the boxes from the attic. She had never asked before. But age was catching up to her in little ways. Stairs, jars, reading glasses with smudges she couldn't find. So I went up. Same attic smell as always. Dust and old air and something that felt like time pressed flat between the beams. The boxes were where they always were. Holiday lights. Porcelain angels. One marked, cold weather, in my father's blocky handwriting. At the bottom was a small plastic bin with a lid that creaked when I opened it. There they were. Not one, but 3 gray sweaters. Each folded. Identical. I stared at them for a long time. Ran my fingers over the fabric. Tried to remember if I'd ever seen them all at once before. I hadn't. Later that night, over pie and too much coffee, I asked her quietly. Why 3? She didn't look up from her mug. Back up, she said. Then after a moment, with a little smile, just in case one of them wasn't ready. The following fall, she didn't put it out. I visited for a weekend in early October. Packed light. Expecting the same quiet magic. But the bed was bare. No sweater. I didn't ask. She was tired more often, and the world had shifted in so many other ways. But I noticed. And maybe, so did she. Because the next morning, it was there. Laid gently over the back of a chair instead of the bed. Not quite in its usual place, but unmistakably there. It felt like a signal. A soft apology. Or maybe a handing over. As if she were saying, I'm still here. But not for much longer. And you'll need to know how to do this someday. When she passed, it was spring. Too early for sweaters. Too soon for leaves to scrape the porch again. But as I walked through her quiet house, sorting papers, stacking books, folding linens I barely recognized, I found it. On the dresser. Not the bed. Not a chair. But folded precisely. In the center of the room. Waiting. I stood there a long time. Didn't touch it. Didn't cry. Just stood. Letting the moment hold me. Letting the silence speak for her. The way it always had. Eventually, I opened the drawer. Second one down. The one I had never touched. Inside, a small cedar sachet, a sewing kit, and a tiny stack of folded notes. Not letters. Not long messages. Just little slips of paper. On each, in her handwriting. First frost, Monday. Wash in cold. Never tumble. Leave it where they can find it. And one that simply said, they won't ask. That's why it matters. I sat on her bed with those notes spread out like cards. The sweater beside me. For the first time, I realized it had never been about the temperature. Not really. It was about noticing, anticipating, choosing to show up in quiet ways. Ways no one applauds. Ways no one posts about. Ways that get folded and set at the foot of a bed when no one's watching. I took one sweater home with me. Left the others in the drawer. Didn't donate them. Didn't pack them away. I just left them folded. Ready. I didn't know when to do it the first time. The weather had turned. The trees outside our window had that quiet shiver to them, the way they did every October. The kind of cold that didn't bark but whispered. That slid through the kitchen tile before you noticed. My son was 8. He still kicked his blankets off every night, and hated wearing socks inside the house. He hadn't yet learned the pleasure of warmth you didn't ask for. And that morning, as he trudged into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes, I saw it. He shivered, just once, and didn't say a word. He sat, pulled his knees to his chest, and waited for breakfast. And I thought, this is the moment. The sweater wasn't his size. Not yet. So I went to the closet, pulled down one I'd been saving. A soft, charcoal gray pullover that was maybe a little too big, but had that same weight to it. And I folded it. Twice over. Arms in. Flat and quiet. And I placed it gently at the foot of his bed. No note. No explanation. Just there. Waiting. He didn't mention it. But later that morning, as we got ready to leave, I saw him pull it on without a word. And he wore it all day. That evening, I found it draped over the back of the couch. Loose, relaxed, familiar. I folded it again. Softly. Almost without thinking. And I placed it back on the bed. That's how it began. It's strange, becoming the one who folds. The one who sees before being asked. The one who senses the first wind coming down the hill. I thought I'd miss the magic of it. Miss being the child who woke to find something already waiting. But there's something deeper in becoming the one who prepares. Something steadier. The next fall, my daughter was born. And when she was old enough, I bought her one too. Lighter gray. Smaller arms. Buttons down the front. The first morning her toes curled on the tile. I placed it beside her blanket on the nursery chair. And like her brother years earlier, she said nothing. But later that day, she wore it while drawing on the floor, dragging the sleeves behind her like soft wings. Seasons became years. And the sweaters became part of the rhythm. They never asked where they came from. Or why they always showed up right when the leaves began to fall. They just knew. It would be there. Folded. I kept a small space for them in the hall closet. A basket. Nothing fancy. And every September, when I felt the light change, just slightly, I'd check the forecast. Run my hand across the fabric. And get ready. I didn't always get it right. Some years, the warmth came too late. Some mornings, they were already at school before I noticed the wind had shifted. But I tried. And more than once, I'd come home to find one of the sweaters folded back. Not perfectly. Not the way my mother did it. But folded. By small hands. Placed gently at the edge of the bed. Almost like they knew. There was a kind of silence in that. Not absence. Not avoidance. But understanding. A quiet agreement between generations. You saw me. Now I see you. You gave me this. Now I give it back. One October, years later, my son came home from college for the weekend. He was taller now. Shoulders broader. But still left his socks in the hallway like he was 8 again. That Saturday morning, I went into the guest room to drop off a book. And there it was. A sweater. Folded. Not one I had placed. His. Resting at the foot of the bed. arms tucked in. Just like mine used to be. I didn't say anything. He didn't either. But later, as we stood on the porch drinking coffee, he said quietly, "It got cold last night." And that was enough. The thing about these gestures is, you never know which one stays. Which moment gets tucked into the drawer of someone's memory. Which folded sweater becomes the one they remember forever. You don't do it for that. You do it because someone once did it for you. Now, when I see my children step into that chill air, no jacket, no hesitation. I don't rush after them. I let the cold find them once. Let it nip their fingers. Let it teach. Because when they come inside and find something already waiting, that's the warmth that stays. Not the fabric, but the knowing. By the time the years began to slow me down, I had my own drawer. Top left. Cedar lined. Neatly arranged. Inside, 2 sweaters, one my size, one too small. A lint brush. A handwritten note. And a list of the first cold days from the past 10 years. I didn't plan to write them down at first. But one morning I did. Just out of curiosity. Then again the next year. And again. Soon it became habit. Like watching the leaves turn. Like folding fabric without being told. My daughter was in her 20s now. She called on Sunday evenings, mostly. Sometimes when she was walking home from work. The sound of passing cars in the background, her voice half tired, half thoughtful. I never asked if she remembered the sweaters. Never brought it up. But one day, she told me she bought one. Simple. Gray. No design. No tags. She said it made her think of home. And I smiled into the phone. That was all she said. But I knew. Later that week, I mailed her a package. No return address. No letter inside. Just a small folded sweater. A bit softer than the ones I used to give her. With the arms tucked just the way I remembered. She called 3 days later. Didn't mention it. Didn't need to. But her voice was warmer. And for the first time in years, I heard her smile through the line. The final autumn I lived in the house alone. I folded 3 sweaters. Not because anyone was coming. Not because of a forecast. Just because it felt right. I placed one on my bed. One in the guest room. And one across the back of the sofa. Where the morning light always hit around 9 o'clock. I didn't touch them for days. Didn't wear them. Didn't move them. But every time I passed by, they felt like someone was still here. Or maybe like I never really left. I started writing a list. Not of things to be done, but of things to be noticed. The leaves crunching outside the kitchen door. The way cold climbs the hallway tile first. The moment a sweater is needed before anyone says they're cold. I folded it and placed it in the drawer. Above it, a note. For whoever remembers next. When I knew I couldn't stay in the house much longer. I walked through the rooms one last time. Room by room. Light by light. I didn't take much with me. But I made sure the drawer was left open. Just slightly. So that someone, maybe a relative, maybe a stranger, might be curious enough to look inside. Might find the list. The notes. The way the fabric still smelled of years. At the assisted living home, the rooms are smaller. Simpler. There's no hallway tile. No attic. No guest rooms. But I brought one sweater with me. Same gray. Same weight. I fold it every October. Place it gently on the end of the twin bed. Even though no one visits that often. Even though the nurses think I forgot it there. But I know. And last week, for the first time, my granddaughter stayed overnight. Just one night. Her first time visiting me alone. In the morning, as she shuffled out of the guest nook rubbing her eyes, I saw her glance at the chair. The sweater was there. Neatly folded. She looked at me. Didn't speak. Just walked over. Picked it up. And smiled. Not surprised. Not confused. Just understood. Later that day, when her parents came to pick her up, I watched through the window as they loaded the car. She climbed in, still wearing the sweater. And just before the door closed, she looked back at the porch. At me. And nodded. That night I sat on the edge of my bed, smoothed out the blanket, and folded the extra sweater one last time. Placed it gently across the foot of the bed. Not for anyone in particular. Just for tradition. So if someone walks in after I'm gone, they'll know. This place once held care. Someone once paid attention. Someone once folded a sweater. Not because it was asked for, but because it was needed. We don't always know what we leave behind. But I hope, in a closet somewhere, in a drawer, on the foot of a bed, there will always be one sweater, neatly folded, waiting quietly, just in case someone comes in from the cold, and doesn't yet know that they were seen, before they ever thought to ask.